Hey everyone, welcome back to session 3 with our GetWireless Peplink team. As we've said before, Mike and Miles are taking the time to dig into the different variations of the Peplink lineup. Today we will be addressing the benefits and the capabilities of SpeedFusion, WAN smoothing, hot failover, how you can differentiate these to these customers. The biggest notion that we want to break is SIM bonding. There are other companies that say they can put connections together and we'll make it faster. Peplink is the only manufacturer that can do modem integration, bonding. We'll let Mike dig into the science and technicalities. But again, make sure you're leaving comments, questions, concerns in the box down below. You can subscribe, as my YouTuber friends are saying. And Mike's going to dig into this, do a lot of screen share. Make sure you're following along. If you got to take some screenshots, go for it. But remember, always bring us on to the calls. This is not something you want to dig into with your customer solo. This is something we need to figure out the customer's current infrastructure, how their network is set up, what's kind of their dream scenario, and especially how is their performance in that area, whether it be hardline or cellular, all other carriers. We don't want to just jump the gun and say, boom, you can connect 3 connections together. Yes. Mike, the floor is yours.
All right, let me share my screen. And let's talk about SpeedFusion with Peplink. So SpeedFusion is Peplink's SD-WAN solution, right? And within that solution in SpeedFusion, you really get 3 benefits. First one is bandwidth bonding, hot failover, and the last one is WAN smoothing. So WAN smoothing I'll talk about first, kind of go from right to left a little bit. So WAN smoothing is helping out with the internet connection. This is where if you're doing a video broadcast or voice over IP with OneTalk or some other voice over IP solution, and you get that tinny sound or delay and when they answer the phone where it connects and you have to say hello 6 times, that's where WAN smoothing comes out. Hot failover, this is where it can go from one WAN connection to another WAN connection with very little to no packet loss. It can transfer from one internet connection to the other internet connection without breaking your data session. In a call like this, it would stay active. You might not even know that I switched over from a primary wired to a cellular connection. The last one, the one everyone talks about, is bandwidth bonding. And this is where I can bond multiple WAN connections, for example, multiple cellular SIM cards, if the device is capable, to get faster, more reliable throughput. So that's a quick overview of SpeedFusion. It's a VPN technology. So it's a VPN tunnel between at least 2 Peplink devices. What I mean by that is you have a headend device and then a bunch of your edge devices. So you can do a star configuration or a point-to-point. So there's a couple of different ways that you can set it up. And I'll go through a little example of the network setup. But again, please note that it is a VPN technology between 2 Peplink devices. Because it is a VPN, there is a little bit of overhead loss, and that depends on the device. It also depends on the network, all sorts of things. But you can factor about 20% overhead. So in Dillon's example of 2 + 2 to get 6, really it would be more like 5, right? Because you would have that 20% loss.
It's an important one to remember. You promise it on the pre-sale side. In a perfect environment, you get this, but reality, once you start going into the environments and you start getting into power congestion and number of people, all that stuff, it's just important to remember.
I'm glad you brought that up because Peplink can only take what it's giving and work with it, right? Mm-hmm. So, for example, if I am in Minneapolis, Minnesota at a Vikings game where they're going to beat up on the Packers, you got thousands of people there all on the towers. If you're going to bond multiple SIM cards of radio and expect high throughput because that's why even on all the cellular things out there, it says up to a certain throughput, right? We can only take what we're given. And there's many factors that happen with this within SpeedFusion. You got to think of how many people are on the tower, how many people are in that area, how many towers you have, right? Is it a good cellular connection compared to a bad cellular connection? We were talking about this earlier. Let's say Verizon's awesome, right? And then you got something like T-Mobile where it's really not performing great. I'm not going to get a higher throughput in that case because I got a good and a bad. It's not going to equal a great, right? I'm going to get somewhere in the middle. So there's a lot of factors to think about this, but there are some great use cases out there that can help out. We had a tech company bond 6 Verizon SIM cards on a bus, and they are getting close to a gig throughput, right? They're getting up to that 800 megs down and 200 to 300 megs on an up, which it's awesome. And they're driving around a huge location. So it's not just a fixed application. This is a mobile application. The other thing you got to think about is, how does Verizon look at the account? Do they see 6 SIM cards connecting to one tower, so they're just going to manage the throughput of all those 6 SIM cards into one data connection? There's so many factors for this. But to your point earlier, Dillon, getting you guys integrated often and early is important, right? Because then you can set those expectations. You can talk about the differences. If you go out there and just say, oh, yeah, we can bond 2 lines to get you 200 megs upload, no problem, right? Then we're going to have issues. That's going to be a hard conversation, right? Because there's certain expectations. But yes, we can do it. This is something else that I don't think people know about, but Peplink has been doing bonding since 2006. All of these years of experience compared to the other manufacturers that are just starting to get into it, or maybe even say they can do it via load balancing type stuff. So again, Peplink has a lot of experience in this.
And you say there is a brand that has said this in the Verizon space recently. Even on their website, it is load balancing, which is shooting through that data through which pipe is going to work best.
Yep.
And so if you had to give a quick comparison of load balance versus bandwidth bonding versus, say, a true SD-WAN, what are the main differences for these teams to their customers? Because managed service providers always say, well, hey, we'll do an SD-WAN.
Yeah. So Peplink's SD-WAN solution, their VPN, it's a proprietary VPN. They developed it, right? It's theirs. When you get into the load balancing, the perfect way to look at it is take us 3 on this call right now. I start a data session, right? I'm going to use one WAN connection. Dillon, you start the next one. You're going to use a separate WAN connection. Miles would get on and use a separate WAN connection all together, right? So really, we're just breaking out those WAN connections and dedicating the throughput to the individual. It's actually combining those at the packet level where I can truly get bonding. So all 3 of us would use all 3 WAN connections to get that faster throughput. So that's the best way that I can explain it. And then there's all sorts of different SD-WAN solutions out there, depending on what you want. It's kind of like the name brand, whatever technology.
Yeah, there's some big MSPs out there that provide an SD-WAN solution.
It's just software-defined networking.
Thousands of dollars. And I'm like, for what? You're a record store. What do you need this SD-WAN?
It sounds like they got sold to, right?
That's usually my take on it. But for us to, say, come in and provide a failover, you got to work with that MSP because you got to integrate with their infrastructure. It does get very messy, but I wanted to make sure reps and teams out there knew, hey, you have this customer with this solution already. You need to know that there could be an obstacle integrating a Verizon failover connection.
Yeah, we've talked about it a couple of times with the theme here, but it's easier to set the table correctly than to fix the problem on the back end. Not that it can't be done, but it's the square peg in a round hole situation, right? So we thought we were getting a round hole, but in reality, we have a square peg. How do we make it work? You can do it technically, it's just very complicated. But if we do it right to begin with, we say, here's some reality, here's some bumpers on the bowling alley that we can stay with. It makes life so much easier.
So Mike, we'll let you continue on. Got a really good one to show us. Again, everybody, we're going to address this in kind of a true demo of a unit on the next session. And that way you can actually see how this is configured, what it can do before and after. Kind of that biggest loser mindset of, hey, what was I connected at before? What do I do after SpeedFusion?
Biggest gainer in this case, right? For connectivity.
All right. This is kind of the best example I can come up with, and this is a good visual. So I have a BR2 Pro. Just to give you a little background in the 2 Pro, this has 2 cellular radios in it. So I can have 2 active SIM cards at the same time. This does have a bunch of Ethernet WAN ports in it. It has 2. I can put a primary, say this is a cable modem. This is my primary with that internet connection. I'm going to have the internet access go through that. And then I want to add cellular as a backup. This has 2 cellular radios. For this, I could say radio 1 is backup 1, radio 2 would be backup 2. This is just standard out of the box. Now, if I want to enable SpeedFusion, so I want to do bonding, what I need to do is build a VPN to a headend device. Now there's multiple different head-end devices that I could use. This could be a physical device like this SDX Pro. I can mount this in a data center where I can build the VPN from the 2 to the SDX Pro. The number of BR2 Pros depends on the capabilities of the head-end device. For example, the SDX Pro can hold up to, I believe it's up to 3,000 peers, which means 3,000 BR2 Pros. Okay.
I don't think anyone's going to have
Love it
that
if you guys could sell that.
Let us
And
know if you have
actually,
that
we do
problem.
have customers that do that, right? We
So
have,
a quick question on that then, since we have talked about the physical versus virtual, which you'll dig into in a second.
Yeah.
Say the physical device, can it be right next to it? Does it have to be off at some data center? What if this is just a large suite floor?
technically, I would say no, because it's all using that same internet connection. So if the primary internet went out, that means your head-end device would go out too. So then you would just be cellular.
Would
But
you
it's
put
not bonded.
the physical head-in unit?
Yeah, so typically you would see that in a data center or in a corporate office type scenario, right? You would have it like in a branch location, say it's like a hardware store, right? You would have it at the corporate office of the hardware store. All the branch stores would have the BR2 or whatever Peplink device we look at.
Okay.
So that would be the first one. A lot of companies, like you said, don't have a spot for it. Let's put a FusionHub. This is a virtual device that you can put in the cloud, right? It's cloud agnostic. So I can put it in Google Cloud, I could put it in Azure, I could put it in AWS. There's even some off ones like Vultr or DigitalOcean. Whatever cloud instance you use, you can spin up a FusionHub in it. This is just a virtual appliance. The number of devices that I want to connect to my FusionHub, I would have to write FusionHub for it. I would have to have, if it's a FusionHub 500, I could have 500 BR2 Pros connected to it. In your example earlier, Dillon, I don't have to mount it anywhere. I don't have to put it in a rack. I'm just going to have somebody else manage that physical device for me in the cloud, right? The biggest thing to note is you need to have a good internet connection coming into whether it's the virtual appliance. If I put a 50 meg internet plan into my head-end device, my max throughput on the edge is only going to be 50 megs. I'm going to need a decent internet. If I'm going to try to get to a couple hundred megs of upload, I'm going to need at least a gig internet coming into this device. And then depending on how many edge devices I have, you got to think of it. It's important to understand that as well. Whether it's a virtual device or a physical device, you can build the VPN to it. There's one more called SpeedFusion Connect, and that's a service from Peplink. So if I just had a couple of these, I'm a small business, I have 3 locations, I don't want to pay for a FusionHub, I don't want to pay for a physical device. I could use SpeedFusion Connect to build my VPN technology. The max throughput I'm going to get on that is 400 megs, but if I'm a small business, that's probably sufficient, right? I can bond a couple of 100 meg plans and get up to that 400 meg as possible. So there's 3 technical options, but really this is the setup of it. Once I have SpeedFusion connected, then I can bond my 2 cellular lines, or I could bond all 3. If this was a gig and I'm only getting 100 megs from Verizon, I'm not going to want to bond the primary one too. It's kind of that whole Verizon and T-Mobile, where Verizon's great, T-Mobile is bad.
Well, it's like math from second grade. 1 plus 10 is much lower than 10 plus 10.
If you have 4 BR2 Pros leading into a FusionHub, and they each had 2 activations, so 2, 4, 6, 8, obviously 8 times 200 is not going to give you 1.6 gigs, but can that all lead back to the FusionHub, and then each one of those BR2s have that speed?
As long as it comes into this is decent.
Yep.
So
Which
yeah,
obviously that's overkill, right? They did have a budget, and they wanted 2 BR2 Pros. They lead that back to a FusionHub, and then they tie those 2 Pros back to their switch.
I think that we touched on this in the last video. It's really important to keep saying this, but in a perfect world, in an RF chamber.
Yep. I live in the perfect world, Miles.
Yeah, today, Dillon, you got it. Your perfect world is today. No, but like it's an annoyance to keep saying it, but it really is going to save all of us. Everybody watching this, I'm assuming, is selling this, working with the product, or working with you, or whatever. So we're looking for best case or best customer experience for all of us, right? Dillon, you're my customer, so on and so forth down the chain. We just want to make sure that this is potentially what we can do, but reality is going to be a bit.
And that's my biggest stressor is I tell them, hey guys, this is probably what you're going to get.
Yeah.
And just like the example I texted you about yesterday, somebody wanting 200 megs of upload. That's like your bus scenario early company. You're going to have 8 connections, 8 modems, right? You can be stacking up all this hardware and create a jerry-rigged solution, or go to the correct hardware and have it done the right way.
And then now we're going back to the BR1 Mini conversation. Why the BR1 Pro versus the Mini? Because again, we're not trying to just upsell you. Truly, if you want this capacity or performance, you have got to have this minimum right here. If you're trying to peak this Mini out because it's cheaper, or you're trying to give the BR1 Pro, which is more expensive, just it's well within its parameters, or you're trying to peak out the Mini, like there's an obvious choice here.
Let me just bring this up real quick. I kind of want to show you a really cool setup that Peplink, it's a good description of. This is on Peplink's website under their HD-WAN Dome product. So if you want to bond multiple radios, this is the way to do it. This device here, this is what we call a balanced device. This actually happens to be the SDX Pro device. And then these are HD-WAN domes. These are actually routers that you would plug into the SDX, and then from here to a headend device like another SDX or a FusionHub, I would build that VPN. But now I can bond all of these radios. I can scale this. So if you take a look at it, I could have 16 radios that I could bond in this. Or in most cases, what people do is they take 3, 6, up to 8. This one's used for switch port, or you could put another module for SIM cards. I could go into this. I could start explaining this for hours. But really, if you have somebody that has really high expectations for throughput, this is your setup, right? I get a bunch of domes, and then I have my SDX, and then I have a headend, whether it's another SDX or a FusionHub. They have an SDX in the bottom of the bus, and then they have 6 domes mounted on the top. They have access points in there, and even over Wi-Fi, they're getting 200 to 300 megs on the up. This is a perfect example.
I just recently used the SDX Pro for a power company, and so we would be utilizing no 5G modems in the SDX Pro, and the modules would just be Ethernet WAN ports. But I guess if you had to, you could do 3 HD-WAN domes and a module with 2 5G modems. About before, if you were going, say, that mini, I thought the total throughput through the tunnel is only going to allow X.
Well, that depends on the tunnel, right? This can support up to, I think this one's a gig throughput with SpeedFusion, right? So that's what this will support. So the max I can get is at 1 gig, okay? I can bond as many radios as I want, right? Let's say I bond 16, if I just do math calculation, it could be, let's just say 2 gigs. I'm only going to get a gig throughput because that's what this device can handle. Peplink is coming out with further devices, right? They're coming out with more capable devices. You'll see one that will have 10 gigs of throughput through SpeedFusion, which is going to be awesome.
Wow.
But I was going to say real quick, just to get fancy with it, it's a Dillon, your 2 devices in your house, the Antenna Max S and the BR1 Pro, that's what you can make an HD-WAN dome out of. So the cost is going down quite a bit with that.
Correct.
Too.
Yep. Or the newly released, the Antenna Max Duo. Then I can take 2 BR1 Pros, put that in there. It's getting similar to cost if you were to do an HD-WAN dome, but that gives you capabilities. Personally, I love the concept of just HD-WAN dome. It's all in, run that Cat 6 down. And,
it is easier.
It's cleaner. And you tell the customer, hey, on a Verizon side, there's 600 megs, which of course we're looking at 525, something like that. And then take about 20% of that as your upload. That tunnel must be, they can't go doing that to a BR2, right? It must go to this device. This is your best use. Build the tunnel, provide an access point. And here's your whole infrastructure. You brought up that HDX a second ago, so I'll let you dig into that before we close out.
So this device has 4 cellular radios in it, right? Instead of doing the SDX with 3 domes, you might be able to do this device and then just do it 4 antennas to it. The problem is on something like this, and that's the same discussion that we were talking about earlier. Sorry, I just want to get to the back to show you all the antenna ports that are on this device.
Oh my gosh.
This is 4 of them stacked.
It's a lot.
So think about this on an install, right? You're going to have this many wires that you're going to have to fish up to a top of an antenna. Where if you do the SDX, you just have one cable per,
One Cat
and you
6.
can run it a lot
And
longer.
is the SDX, I can't remember, is it providing PoE or will we still need
It
the
will
injector?
do PoE out as well, so it can power.
That's just
It's so much cleaner. Anyway, back to that SpeedFusion technology, right? So it comes down to get you guys into the conversation as early as possible. You guys can uncover the needs, start thinking about the overall expectation, the what's needed for equipment. We can definitely help out with the configuration of that, and not the install, but definitely help out with the configuration. If we're provided information, we can take that and make it a lot better, right? Get you better. You could have 4 100 meg Verizon SIM cards in there. You can bond them together, and you can get faster than the 100 megs. You can do a much better.
To our listeners, 1 times 4 does not equal 400. And also, that's if you were a high performance area for that location. So that's why a lot of customers will utilize, hey, T-Mobile's really good right here. Verizon's really good right here. I want to make sure I have that redundancy. It's nothing against our friends at Verizon. It's just what is the best fit for the customer. And that may entail adding a Starlink outside randomly at a job site to just bring that in and say, all right, worst comes to worst, I got this thing out there just sitting. So I think this is perfect, guys. A lot of info here. This is just more of an educational overview. Mike, Miles, and I, we're going to change our shirts. We're going to make sure that we go through a full example, more than likely with the BR2 Pro. 2 activations together. Make sure you leave any questions that you want us to make sure we answer on the next session. But these will be kind of tiered out for you to listen. We may even do an advanced dig into that SDX Pro, what it can handle, some use cases on the higher end type enterprise customers that aren't just small mom and pop barbershops that are streaming Netflix all day on their YouTube TV. Mike, Miles, thanks so much. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon.
See you, everybody.